So what do you do when you've got a console error here that is part of a test that you actually are expecting that error to happen? Well, what we're going to do is I'll have a before all where I'll say jest.spy on console error and then mock that implementation to do nothing. So now whenever console error is called, it just doesn't do anything. And that works out great. The error's gone. We're happy. We can ship this, whatever. But what happens in the future when somebody adds something to the test or changes the implementation or something that actually triggers a console error to get called? Well, now we're not going to see it because we've mocked console error to do nothing. And so we really only want to mock console error to do nothing for this test, not for everything else in this file. And so you might think, well, let's put this in here and that's all fine and good, except you also want to make sure you clean up. And so we'll have an after all right here, and we'll say console.error mock restore just to clean that all up. And if we run this, it actually is going to work out just fine because we do spy on this eventually. But what if we skip this test, or maybe we delete this test in the future? Well, now this is going to explode. So we don't want to do that. Let's figure out if we can do something else a little bit better instead. So instead, I want to just scope these hooks to this specific test. And what I can do is make what's called a describe block. And here I'm just going to say console errors. And then I'll move this test into here, and I'll move these hooks into there. And now these hooks will only apply within this describe block. So any test that's outside of that will not have these hooks applied. I don't typically use describe blocks because often people will put all of their tests in a single file in a single describe block, and it leaves me scratching my head like, what benefit is that really if all of your tests are in one describe block? And often people will use describe blocks to group different tests together in a single file. And I would rather just make two different test files, and they can be run in parallel that way too, so which is even better. But sometimes if I want to just scope down a couple of hooks to a specific set of tests, then I will use a describe block just like this. So if we save this now, we're not going to run into any errors. And if one of these other tests triggers an error, so we'll just do a console error yo right here, then we are going to see that error message and we can deal with it in the way that we need to. So we're in a good place here with our console errors by nesting these hooks for the setup of mocking that implementation and the cleanup of mocking that implementation within this describe block, so they only apply to this one test.